Oh. You got a spot for Spence? Spencer.
Can I get off, please? You guys ready?
Yeah.
For what?
And the second day was and the third day was guys, it just don't get any easier than that. If they would have fought the battle the 17th, 18th, 19th of them.
Some of them.
Yeah.
There's a duck. Gather as close to them as you can, guys. We get to
Now, we're going to talk about battle. I need 5 volunteers to step up. There's one here. Come on forward, dude. There's 2 here. I need 3 more. Come on, Mr. Tarantula. 3. I need 4.
What do you think?
I'll
Good,
take
isn't
you,
it?
young
Yeah.
lady. I appreciate your efforts. Okay, lady right here. Lady right here. First student, you're the lucky one next to Dave. You're next. Hey, do I have any fans of the Indianapolis Colts? Okay, might as well get this out of the way. The Confederate Army is set up in 3 infantry corps. How many corps?
3.
Say 3. 3. Each corps has an ordnance officer supplying ammunition to cannon. Lee's 1st Infantry Corps, their ordnance officer was Colonel Peyton T. Manning. Do any of you want to guess what Colonel Peyton T. Manning's great-great-great-great-grandson does today? He throws the football in Indianapolis, USA. Not to be outdone, he's a Confederate. The 16th Regiment of Massachusetts Infantry in the Yankee Army here, their chief musician was Corporal Felix Vinatieri. Do you want to guess who Felix Vinatieri's great-great-great-grandson might be? How about Adam, Peyton's field goal kicker here? A little bit of a tie for you Hoosiers. Now, friendly it up here, guys.
Scoot together.
Push it together. Oh, no. Nice straight line. They fought in these lines for the simplest reason you can imagine. Movies about warfare back then, pictures back home in your school book showing these battle lines, feature what I call, and repeat after me, the big. We'll start again. The big. Stinking. Lie. And the big stinking lie was gun smoke. The gunpowder the weapons used was incredibly dirty. Lots of extra charcoal and sulfur still in the mixture. The weapons also employed cotton and or paper wadding that burnt real slow. How slow? Real slow. And it burnt real smoky. How smoky? The clouds of smoke these great battles create almost instantly are just monstrous. To give you an idea of the nature of the smoke, you see the tree line right down there behind the stone wall. Real quick, we'd have a hard time seeing that tree line through the smoke laying on this field. We might see dimly that far. Anything beyond that's hidden from our view in smoke completely. A man standing at that stone wall or just beyond, in this smoke-covered haze, hard to tell whether he wore the blue uniform of a Yankee or the grayish-brown outfit of a Confederate. Difficult from here to realize whether that fellow faced this way or whether that fellow faced that way. We're in line for the simplest reason you can imagine. Your name? Trent? Trent Morgan? This is Trent. Do y'all know Trent? Yes. Say, hey, Trent. Hey, Trent. Trent has a right standing on the smoky field to assume. The men stretching to his right, shoulder to shoulder to shoulder, till they're hidden in smoke and beyond. Whose men should these be? Somebody say Trent's. Trent's. Off to his left, side by side by side, till they're hidden in smoke and beyond. Whose soldiers should these be? Trent's. Trent, I got a question for you, sir. Think fast. Out there 100 yards in your front, who knows what side he's on? You can just see a dim figure. Trent, are you going to cry out? Yo! Whose side are you on? Or Trent, are you going to pull a trigger, sir? Excellent thinking. You're a bright fellow, Trent. Shoot them first, consider it later. Do you K the K's? Do you K the K's?
I don't know.
Put the fist out. What have we done? We're Kanawking the...
K.
Kanawking the... Knuckles. K to K's. K it up, baby. Shoot them first and figure it out second. In a major battle, if a player in our line managed to wander 100 yards forward, this fellow now has just as much chance getting shot in the back by his'n as getting struck in the front by their'n. Back in line, you ain't shot yet. You can't show this smoke problem in a movie about this war. Who's going to buy a movie ticket for $8 to see a bunch of smoke on a screen? That's a bad purchase. Would you agree with me? These fancy pants art prints that run $200 a pop today. $200 to see smoke put on canvas. If you want to spend the money, God bless you. To understand Civil War battle, we must first erase the smoke away from the front so we can see what stands behind. We have to fight in these stinking battle lines for about 15 more years after our Civil War ended. There will be several small advances, but easily the big deal. In the late 1870s, the Japanese War Department began to develop smokeless gunpowder. Japanese chemists finally figured how to refine the extra garbage from the mix. A cleaner burn gives you less smoke. And now we can spread out and perform the way modern warriors do today. But until then, we are stuck in our stinking battle lines. Have I explained that? Now, the big difference in the weapons back then versus today is how quickly you can fire. Today, you can squeeze off around 100 shots a minute if you're good at it. Back then, 5 a minute. You want to shoot a lot at your enemy. So to get a lot of fire placed on the enemy, they fought back then in what's called a double-ranked battle line. These 5 here represent the front rank. Immediately behind them, the second or rear rank took position. And the rear rank to fire will simply place their rifles right between their heads. Bam! How many shots before eardrums rupture? Not many. A great Civil War battle, and this one here is certainly one of those, is very quickly going to feature blood trickling from ear canals as ears and drums burst, rupture, etc. I told you more of our men die in this war than all other wars combined, did I not? Yes. Of the men that survived this stinking thing to go home and experienced much real combat, 1 out of every 7 or 8 survivors went home deathly. I want to hear these 2 words loud. War stinks.
War stinks.
That ain't loud enough. Do it again.
War stinks.
Make them all hear it.
War stinks.
It is not war these battlefield parks intend to honor. It is not battle this tour means to honor. These places are about the men and women today. They're willing to stand and serve, surrendering lives and bodies for a place called America. Is America a special place? Yes. A couple of words called liberty and freedom are those special words. Yes. These places honor them and what they do, not it and how it stinks. Now I want to show you how to win a battle in a war toot sweet. Say toot sweet. Toot sweet. If my line of soldiers attacks their line head on, this is called a frontal assault. Say frontal assault.
Frontal assault.
They're going to shoot me down as I advance, aren't you? I thought we were getting along much better. Do any of you think I wish to be shot down? I want to do my job better. If at all possible, I want to hit them on a flank. Say flank.
Flank.
Flank means the side of a thing. This is my right.
Flank.
Flank. This is my left.
Flank.
In their line, this is their left.
Flank.
And this is their right.
Flank.
Watch how this works. If I was their enemy, and somehow I could establish a position up here, they're outflanked. I set up can especially take a shot to the middle of their line so the shell hits, I'm sorry, Trento. Bam! If I fire too far down the line, what am I going to do? Hit somebody further away. What if my shell drops a little bit short up here? Somebody closer. But would you agree all I've got to do right now is fire down their line and I'm hitting somebody somewhere? And except for Tarantula Man here. Is that a tarantula? Can any of those four get a decent shot at me? If those guys shoot at me, who might they hit? That ain't what Peyton Manning wants. What big, gigantic capital letter do we make here? Say it. They're the base, I'm the cap of a... When you outflank your enemy, say outflank. Some people call it turning their line. Others simply call it capping the... It's all the same. You play your firepower on them pretty much 100%. They don't shoot back at you very well at all. 5,000 years ago, a Chinese commander wrote a book titled The Art of War. This man called Sun Tzu said he outflanked his enemies using spears and slings that threw rocks. 2,000 years ago, you ever heard of Caesar? Old Julie outflanked his enemies using bows and the great warrior nation of Africa, the Zulu. Say Zulu. Say it 4 times fast. That's their battle cry, a little bit oomphier than you guys. The Zulu learned to win their battles by striking both enemy flanks at the same time. Napoleon did it, and I do mean Napoleon Bonaparte, not Napoleon Dynamite. Civil War commanders did it. 16 years ago was another war in the Middle East. Anybody know the name of the other war? Desert Storm? The Gulf War? After the air attacks ended, the ground war began. The Americans and our allies kept the enemy Iraqi army busy in front. The Americans then sent a large force of tanks on a big sweeping maneuver that brought them down onto the Iraqi right flank like a ton of bricks, at which point we dropped the Iraqis like dominoes in a line. You want to attack your enemy head on. Where do you want to strike them? Now, after day one, the Yankees got lucky. The Yankees fell back onto a series of hills and ridges that can protect both their right and left flanks from Confederate attacks. The Yankee right flank is Culp's Hill here. The Yankee line then ran about 4½ miles from where we are right here in a big J or fishhook shape down to another hill called Round Top. Now, terrible thing happened on the morning of day 3. We're going to go through the battle day by day, but your state monument's here for a terrible, terrible reason. On the morning of July 3rd, before the sun rose, the 27th Indiana Regiment, say, go Hoosiers.
Go Hoosiers.
Their monument's right over there on the rock. They were on the hillside behind with some snow on it. They were ordered to form battle line like these guys, advance out into this open field called Spangler's Meadow. Say Spangler's Meadow.
Spangler's Meadow.
That's the name of the guy that owned the meadow. You're on to it. To find out where the Confederates are, a reconnaissance by fire. But these boys from Indiana are pretty much frontiersmen, Westerners then. The night before in the dark, they sent out scouts to see what's out there. We don't have to feel for the Confederates. The Indiana scouts reported there were about 1,500 Confederates over that way, aiming this way. At the end of the field there is the famous Stonewall Virginia Brigade, got its name from Stonewall Jackson himself. And up on that hill is another 2,000 Confederates aimed here. That means this field right in front of you is ringed by nearly 5,000 Confederates. The 300 or so boys of the 27th Indiana are ordered to form battle line and advance in this field and see what's out there. They send back a message to Yankee headquarters. We can tell you what's out there. Confederates by the thousands ringing this stinking field. Do we still need to advance per orders? The order came back down through the chain of command, move out. The commanders of the Indiana boys said, this is suicide, this ain't warfare, this is murder. But I suppose it's the order. The 27th Indiana obeyed orders. By the time they made it to their advance point, where one of my favorite monuments on the field is, right there, 11 men carrying their 2 flags, Old Glory and your state flag, have been shot down, 7 to death. They've already had 1/3 of their men shot down, littering that 100 yards of field. To move any further, that means every one of your boys is going to be shot in this field. Would you agree? The officers of the 27th Indiana realized it's just not worth it. Let's disobey orders. They ran to the front of the regiment. And as the bullets are flying, they commanded the regiment, "Attention!" And then gave them a non-military order. They commanded the men of the 27th Indiana to the rear by the rearward, which means backing, advance. The boys from Indiana ain't going to turn their backs. A bullet in the back usually means coward. I'll take it in the front. They have been slaughtered. Did they achieve anything? Were they right about where all the Confederates were? Terrible. When the battle is over, the Confederates will retreat, as we'll see. As the Yankee Army takes off pursuing the Confederates, the staff of the headquarters of the Yankee Army gallops out. As the 27th Indiana marches by, the men of the Yankee headquarters do not snap a salute. The Yankee officers will take their hats off, place them over their hearts, and bow their heads in prayer for what they have done. When I make a mistake, I give you a wrong number of men on that hill or out in that field. When you make mistakes, you only get B pluses on your quizzes at school, am I correct? When generals make mistakes, what happens? Men die. This must be the hardest thing on earth to do, to send men into battle knowing some of them are going to die, even if you do it perfectly. Would you agree? When your Governor Bowens came here and heard the story of the famous 27th Indiana, Indiana did not yet have a state monument here. Guess where Governor Bowen wants the monument? It's right on this crimson field we're in the middle of. Now there's another thing I'll tell you about when we're back on the bus. I thought what I'd do right here is get you guys gathered in front of your state monument. Is that a group camera we could use? If you want to use your own cameras, put them back towards the end of the sidewalk.
Give me one to hold.
Hold down on the button?
Yeah.
Got this? Yes.
Say E. E. They're a fun bunch.
I did.
Oh, they
Not quite awake yet.
Sleep last night.
You know,
They're a
neither
little
would I.
tired this morning.
When you were in 8th grade, what was that, 50 years ago?
Yeah,
You
about.
wouldn't have thought the same thing too.
I didn't sleep last night either, but I'm a little
50 years
like
I think I did this one.
They've got better things to do than what we want them to do.
My flash won't go off.
Shoot, I
Ladies and gentlemen, let's go. That number, nearly 18,000 Americans dropped day one alone here, runs to one of the top 10 bloody days in American history. This day we're on now, day 2, is worse. 22,000 more. But as the Confederates seize town, the kids are in the streets. The kids are patriots, and they want to yank the Confederates. As the Confederates seize possession of Gettysburg, quiet like it's a big old secret. Loudly serve the Confederates in the ear. Now the kids start to say us. Don't drink the water. We poison the wells. And the Confederates in town hear the wells may have been poisoned. Do any of you want to take a chance on a poisonous water well? No. The next 2 days are going to be up near 90 degrees and thickly humid. Don't forget they wore thick, solid wool uniforms. You think them Confederates in town could have used a cool drink now and again? Let me tell you how bad it got by day 2's afternoon. They love that
Coffee.
no coffee down south, though, but up here in Pennsylvania, they're stealing it from every farmstead in town they can find. By the end of day 2, the Confederates in town, and you remember Francis Nichols' Louisiana boys, to get the liquid to blow their coffee up with, they were reduced to kneeling down and scooping that liquid out of horsehoof prints. And they said that liquid was often a bright golden color. But it's better than no coffee at all, you see, because they love that. That's got to be a sweet move the kids put up, would you agree?
Yeah.
Now, Lee on day 2 wants to strike both Yankee flanks. He wants his main attack to occur down there, a supporting attack up here. Lee wants the attacks to occur early and together. When did he want them to occur? Early. And how did he want them to occur?
Together.
The main attack down there began 4 o'clock that afternoon. Would you call that early?
Yeah.
4 in the afternoon, you should be home from school by then, good sir. The supporting attack up here began 8 o'clock that night. Is that together? that way. Say young men.
Young men.
Any of you like homework? Say no. At least staff, their young men don't want to do homework. Instead of writing orders getting the Confederate Army placed on the Yankee flanks earlier in the day, they took the easy way out and awaited the arrival of their last troops. Alabama infantrymen arrived down there at 4 o'clock. The minute they arrived, they're ordered to attack. They woke up that morning 26 miles away on the other side of the Blue Ridge. Just because it was easy for the staff to do, not messing with a lot of homework, these Alabama Confederates were ordered to march 26 miles, the length of a marathon, on what became a 90-degree day, dripping with humidity, woolen uniforms. A Confederate infantryman carried 23 pounds of gear on his body. What kind of shape would you be in when you got here at 4 o'clock that afternoon? It was said you could trace the route the Alabamans took as they raced over the hills 2 ways. After a while, the roadside they marched along became littered with bodies of men that collapsed, and some actually did die of heat stroke in mid-step. And many, if not most, of Lee's men at Gettysburg were barefoot. Remember the lack of factories down south. Racing barefoot over those rugged rocky passes, after a while footsteps taken left footprints of blood behind. Indeed, a 14-year-old Pennsylvania farm boy said that passed by his pa's house was painted with an 8-foot wide strip of red. Where's all the red come from? Did the Indiana boys obey their orders as bad as they were on the morning of day 3?
Yes.
Those Alabamans are going to obey their orders. They'll start the attack at 4, but by about 7 o'clock, near the great Pennsylvania State Monument, that big dome thing there, the main attack sputtered to a close. An hour later at 8, the supporting attack, supposed to go off at the same time, starts. It's dark by 8, no daylight savings time back then. And I regret that Indiana's finally joined the insanity of daylight savings time. Change our schedule, not the clocks all over the country, my goodness. But you bought into that deal just recently. It's dark. Remember all the smoke of the battlefield? As the Confederates charge up the hill of the park, they repeatedly fired into the backs of their own men. I know we have basketball players here. Is there a track team at your school? Are some people faster than other people? In the dark of night, when the faster people surge ahead of the slower people, what happens to the faster people?
They get shot.
In the back. It's called friendly fire, which ain't friendly at all. Armies of the world did not attack in the dark back then for a very obvious reason you can see. 2 months before this battle, the night attack, Robert E. Lee had a guy named Stonewall Jackson shot to die. You remember Stonewall? Stonewall shot to die by his own men in the dark of night. It's a bad mess up on day 2. And that leads to day 3, which we'll talk about at that monument. I'll take questions in a minute, but do you see this round thing here? This is called a compass. Now, most people think a compass has one of those magnetic needles that points north, basically, right? This is called a locating compass. Anybody here go hunting by any chance? Any hunters? You know how you sight a weapon, sir? You go over the back sight through the front sight. Am I correct? You see how we have sort of sights here? But I'm going to put your name. Spencer, would you just move over here for a moment? Supposedly, when you look down these things, you're going to see different sights. But let me tell you what happened. You see that big hill covered with trees down there, sort of pointing top? That's the round tops. About 4 years ago, we assume a kid climbed up on the compass. His or her weight was too much. It broke loose and slid down the pole. It took about 4 months for a government maintenance worker to get on the job to fix it. They put it back up and tack welded into place. You're the hunter, right, Spencer? Get up on the bench if you will. Stand up on it. I need you guys to move away here. This is the round tops. How far is the round top, Spencer? 2.5 miles. 2.5 miles. Look down over the back side and across the front side. Tell me if that points at the round tops. Go ahead and bend down, sort of lean down like you're sighting.
Point there.
No, it doesn't. It points down to the left. Got one of the maintenance people. How easy is it to see that hill, sir?
That's pretty easy.
How easy would it be to locate this so that it does what it's meant to do and point it around tops? Not very hard, would you agree? You gotta wonder about not just politicians, but the governments they operate. One last thing, that red building over there, if you lived in Gettysburg at this age, that's where you would be incarcerated today. That's our middle school.
You have more camera? Okay.
Pennsylvania said when dedicating this monument, it ain't just generals and colonels that are important. Privates and corporals die as hard and bleed as red as the others do too. Honor every man for the service he commits to his nation. Would you agree Pennsylvania got that right? Now this unit here is the 11th Pennsylvania Reserve, the 40th Infantry. Many of them come from Indiana, Pennsylvania. The real Indiana. You ever heard of Indiana, Pennsylvania?
No.
It's home to the Indiana University of Pennsylvania, which is well known on earth because it produces the best looking male graduates in the entire United States of America. The man in the command of the 11th Reserves is a guy you love, named up here. Repeat after me. Samuel McCartney Jackson. All together. Why do you love him so much? How about if I give you some hints? You guys want to get rich one day? Sure. He did too. When the war ended, he returned to Indiana, PA to carve a living out of earth for him and his family. He ran a hardware store. 7 years after the war, the early 1870s, Samuel McCartney Jackson is thumbing through the pages of a magazine devoted to hardware, construction. He sees an English businessman is offering up a brand new household appliance to be sold in our United States. And he thinks we Americans would love the idea to purchase said household appliance. Do you know which appliance I now am referring to? May I give you all a hint? The English businessman Samuel McCartney Jackson worked with was named Jonathan Crapper. Do anybody want to take a guess at which appliance I now remark upon? The indoor toilet. Many people say crapper. You think it's a dirty word. It's the guy's last name. Until 1907, when the copyright ran out, every toilet on America made of porcelain had to have the name Crapper inscribed into it. What's your last name?
Hudson.
If you had designed it, where would we be going? To the Hudson. Ooh la la fee fee. Just by the way, what was his last name?
Crapper.
Did you catch his first name?
John.
Bingo, John. You see how we get vocabulary in the English world. Everybody wants one. Samuel McCartney Jackson became, and I love this pun, stinking rich. Is that a good pun? Yeah. As his children grew up and got married, he gave each of his kids on their wedding day quite a gift. He gave them a hardware store, stocked with inventory stuff to sell, including what has become now Sir Jonathan Crapper's appliance. The Queen of England knighted him for the deal. Apparently she likes indoor plumbing too. One of his daughters married another Yankee veteran named Alexander Stewart, and together they had a little boy named Jimmy Stewart. How many of you have ever seen a movie in December called It's a Wonderful Life? Every time a bell rings,
An angel gets his wings.
well, I hate to break your hearts, that's a wonderful movie, but it's make-believe. The man in Jimmy's family that gave us Americans the Wonderful Life was Grandpap Samuel McCartney Jackson. Guys, let me tell you, thunder in the outhouse was never any fun. The outhouse in February could be way worse. Would you agree there's a lot of great Americans on this battlefield? Now, I need you to do this quickly to keep us out of the wind. Remember those big green cannon we saw at the base of the tower? What they fired best is good up close and personal called canister. Say canister. I'm going to start this here. I want you to fill the heft and move it around this way. You pack anywhere from 27 to 48 of those iron balls into the cheapest tin can you can make. Load that can into your cannon with about 2 1/2 pounds of gunpowder. When you fire the cannon, the tin can pretty much disintegrates, giving you essentially a gigantic shotgun. Instead of punky little buckshot or BBs, you got those. Repeat after me. Canister, ain't aerodynamic. Do I have any English teachers in the group today?
Yeah.
Yeah? Let's do it again then. Canister, ain't aerodynamic. 8 years of work down the drain right away.
You betcha.
If that stuff kills past 600 yards, it's shocking. But at 300 yards and closer, canister had the momentum to blow through not one, not two, but 3 human bodies and continue flying. I have several quotes about the sound canister makes upon striking lines of men. One quote says it sounds like hailstones hitting window in a store. Blah. Another quote says it sounds like young boys throwing rocks through plate glass window. Yeah. The quote I like best comes from a German immigrant in the Yankee Army, learning English. And he's found himself an awfully good English teacher. Here's what the German boy says it sounds like when canister strikes, and I quote, "Mein Gott, you could hear their bones crack inside of their flesh bags." Would you say that's a special quote? We're going to see where this is used with tremendous, terrible efficiency. On day 3. How's the canister ball going? Keep it moving. I want to stay here out of the wind. Say a Lee.
Ourselves and answer any questions you have. So if you would go with him, and you are welcome to take pictures, and if you have a cell phone, I'd like to ask you to please turn it off now. Okay, we're going to hear a report from the TV. Lovely. Because you really don't need it in the church. You know, you're sitting there trying to listen, and all of a sudden somebody's cell phone goes on. It's kind of scary. All right, so put it on, get your messages, and check your Well, I take 2 or be out there.
Good. So follow me. We'll just sit down first, and then we'll take a look.
Okay, so welcome.
Throughout the day, the occasional offers prayers for peace. Wherever you may be in the cathedral.
My house shall be called a house of prayer for all people. And that has been the theme of this cathedral ever since it was started back in 1907. We have windows here in this cathedral that honor many different denominations of the Christian church. I think of the Maryland window particularly. It has in the center of the window the first Episcopal bishop consecrated in the United States. On his right shows Bishop Carroll, the first Roman Catholic bishop to come to the United States. Over on the left, it has the first Methodist bishop, and it has the first Quaker leader. Further down the aisle is a window that celebrates the founding of the Presbyterian Church in the United States. And then in our south transept, we have another window that celebrates the Roman Catholic Church, the Greek and Russian Orthodox Church, the Church of England, which is what we are a part of, and the Reformation Church with Martin Luther, John Calvin, and Zwingli. So this is a cathedral which truly reaches out to people in all different denominations and faiths, and all are welcome here. Now we call this National Cathedral, which can be confusing to some because there are so many national buildings in this city. We have no connection whatsoever with government. We've never asked for, we've never received any financial assistance from any government. So everything that you see here has been donated by somebody during these past 83 years in which the cathedral was under construction. Take a look up here and you see the flags of all 50 states. What was the first state to come into the Union? I remember a little state on the eastern seaboard starts with a D.
Delaware.
Delaware. Okay, first flag here is Delaware. The flags go in the order in which states came into the Union. So your Indiana flag would be somewhere along in this group here. What were the last 2 states to come in? Alaska and Hawaii. And the last flag is actually District of Columbia, but there's the Alaska flag up here, and there's the Hawaiian flag. But while this has no connection with government, nevertheless the cathedral has more and more come to play a part in the national life. Some of you may have seen President Ford's funeral, which was held here a couple of weeks ago. President Reagan's funeral also was held here. I believe that all of the living presidents have said that this is where their funeral will take place. So in times of sorrow or in times of celebration, the cathedral has been a natural meeting place for people from throughout the country. If you look up, well actually I'm not sure you can see it right now, up past the pulpit there, every week a different flag is brought, and the prayers for that week will begin with prayers for that state. This week is the state of Colorado. Every Sunday a different state is celebrated, and their flag is placed up there by the pulpit for the following week. And about every 2 years, every state gets its own Sunday. And on that day, they invite people from that state to come. Clergy from that state participate in the service. And I'll never forget, about 3 years ago, the Bishop of Maine came. She brought with her about 10 kids from the state of Maine, carrying local banners of their local churches. And as they came down the aisle, I realized that for them, for that morning, this had become their cathedral just as much as St. Luke's Cathedral in Portland, Maine. And that's the whole point of this place as a national cathedral. Sure, it's the cathedral for the Diocese of Washington and the Bishop of the Washington, D.C. Diocese, but it is a place where people from all over the country celebrate on their occasions. Now, what we call this is a Gothic cathedral. When you came in here, where did your eyes go? Up. The whole idea in the building of these churches was to have people looking up, because that's where they felt they were looking up toward heaven. So it started back around 11 or 1200 to try to build a church that would have both height and light. That wasn't an easy thing to do. If you had a very high ceiling, up to that time you needed heavy, thick walls. And if you had heavy, thick walls, there's not much room for windows. And if you didn't have heavy, thick walls, the place would collapse. What made it possible to build a building like this was the invention of something called a flying what? Flying buttress. Take a look at any one of the pillars here. Follow it up with your eyes, and you see those branches that are locked in place by those huge bossed stones. The weight of the roof comes down not onto the top of the walls, but onto the top of those pillars. And with all that force pushing those pillars out, then like books in a bookcase without any bookends, the pillars would fall over. So on the outside, you have large stone arches that are pushing and shoving against the tops of the pillars, pushing them in. So the weight of the roof comes down, hits the top of the pillars, is picked up by the buttresses, and is carried to the ground. The result is you've got a 100-foot ceiling, 10 stories high. And better yet, your walls are all glass. What's so amazing is to think that back in 1100 and 1200, when people in England and Europe were still living in little shacks and huts, they'd figured out how to build a 10, 15-story skyscraper right in the middle of their town. And while everything else has changed, those cathedrals are still there because these buildings last for hundreds and hundreds of years. This building is not built like any modern building. It doesn't have steel in the walls. It's built stone by stone of Indiana limestone.
It's the opposite, yeah. Okay, you see the guard shack? Looks like there's a guy sitting in it.
Oh, yeah?
Okay, look right between the flag and the Washington Monument. There's like a plexiglass window on the roof. Oops, sorry, excuse me.
I'm taking a picture of this horse. This is a cool horse. That's Andrew Jackson. Oh, sorry.
Yes, it does. Yeah. And it's really not that nice. Okay, Allison, if we stop right here, here's a good chance to take some pictures. Stopping right here. This is a good chance to take some pictures until we get a little closer. It's a good chance to take some pictures until we get a little bit closer. Okay.
What's going to happen?
Okay. Probably. Want a picture? I did Lisa move over. We're gonna
Yeah.
I got money.
Hey, they were selling those at Gettysburg as well.
They have a bunch of those.
Really? How much was it?
$1.50.
Cool.
But with plus tax, it's $1.59.
Maybe 6%.
we're gonna see how high you measure up to
They have 500s. And
like
then
up to his stomach. How high was he? Well, turn around so you see his face. He's 5'11". He's a ninth grader. Everyone else is an eighth grader. Okay, Mr. Barber, get up there. Let's see how tall you are. It's pretty close. Pretty close. That's cheating.
Yeah. How tall are
Well,
you,
we'll
Dave?
take an inch off Lincoln for hair.
I just gotta grow them up.
Yeah, I'm short. I don't even measure myself. I did the first year I came. And people laughed. That was from the Peterson house.
Yeah. That's the pillow.
No,
with,
no, no.
That's the pillow with his blood on it there.
Across the street. I did on the way down. Can we hold that? And the big
tree over.
She's mean.
Oh my gosh, she did.
She's doing it. It's like immortal. Why are you taking a picture of that lady from the tree? That's
I had to get a good picture. At the
I'm coming for it.
you guys eventually go down around. Hang on, Caleb's not in.
Go, Gooses.
Last one, last chance. Get in there.
Very well, I can't. Work it, work it. Yeah.
That one's done.
Ew.
That was going on. Oh, that was my camera that just fell. Yeah. And just staying where that sun's not here. I know. Oh, wow.
Should I fall? Wait for me.
Hello.
Hey, what do you think, Elby?
I already went through one camera today.
Already went through one camera?
Yeah, I opened it last night.
Yeah?
Plus, I took a picture of my roommate.
Do you have more?
I already took a picture of the Atlantic. Same thing.
Remember what he said about this?
How many people?
4,000 stars. 4,000 stars. Each star represents 100 people. Actually, it was 403,000 people.
When do we get to go to that?
Go where?
Lake of Memorial.
Later this morning.
Very controversial. That means there are a lot of people for it, a lot of people violent it. A lot of
What's the little? Okay, thanks, Linnell. Bye-bye. Do you have that book? We didn't come on anything, did we?
I can't remember when we came. So now the guy volunteers to do these.
He's a volunteer.
Comes out on the
He
weekends.
checks the names and comes out and does the anniversary date ones.
That's all right.
names go across this way and just keep wrapping.
Right, where it says 1959, that name would be the first person killed. And it goes towards the Washington Monument. And then it picks up at the other end with the order of the deaths and comes to where it says 1975 down there at the bottom. So it starts at 59 at the top and makes a complete circle over the 59. He also
Second soldier, anybody see his dog tag? It's there, you can see it.
Oh, and his shoes.
Yep, down in his boot string. He's got it tied down there. Now I'll tell you, don't look too long on the third guy because you're not going to see it. Okay, you don't see his dog tag, and we'll talk about why later. So the first guy's got his dog tag around his neck. Second guy's tied in his bootlaces. Third guy, you can't see his dog tag. We'll talk about why later. Okay, move on around. Remember, this was dedicated in 1984 to satisfy the Vietnam veterans who did not care for the original memorial. Betty.
I think you could tell. Those aren't friends. Those are Halloween. Hey, you want to rest?
The diamond was already up there. That's who it was. So over at Arlington now, that's who for Vietnam is now. And there probably will never be an unidentified soldier again because any of you join the military, and percentages say that when groups this large, that at least one of you, maybe more, will end up joining the military. The first thing they'll do, they can identify the name. Let's talk about this. Dog tag. These guys get into the national Many right after the Civil War, the United States government said, you know what, we need to come up with a process for maybe being able to identify fear. Fear. Now, why would he be fearful? Well, notice what he's got in his hand. A radio. It is his job to communicate with the man up front. Because if they can, the enemy can take him out. Communication. All the time. Over his shoulder.
Your what?
She's put like colored paper doll on there. So when she was a kid.